to write it out. Hello and welcome to the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show. We are live on the newstreamingnetwork.com, home of goingboldmedia.com, goingsolomedia.com, and WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We are the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show again, and I am your co-host, Judy Forder. I am here with my co-host in peace, Miss
Kris Burke. Hi, everybody. Hi, Judy.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Kris. Before we get started, this is an exciting day. We don't really talk about this too much, but Peaceful Empowerment Works is actually a nonprofit organization. We are a 501c3, and today we are going to start asking if you like the content that we're putting out, you find it informative and entertaining. We're asking
and empowering.
And empowering, yes, because, do you find it peaceful and empowering? Have you found that it works in your life? Yes, we are asking and open to receive donations so that we can continue doing the show.
Yeah.
So not only do we need you to like, comment, share, and subscribe, now we're asking for donations, and you can do that at our website, peacefulempowermentworks.org. There you go. Thank you. peacefulempowermentworks.org. There is no donation too small or too big.
Yes.
So, again, if you would like to support us in a monetary way, you can go to our website at peacefulempowermentworks.org and check it out. We love it. It's beautiful. It's new, and it's ready to roll. So,
yeah.
All right,
exactly. Tell us what you think, and you know what? Also, break a link. That'll get people excited. So you can go out over and test the website too, and just see if you push buttons, and if anything doesn't work, let us know.
Let us know, please. Excellent.
Because we push buttons, but we need a lot of foot traffic to come through and push buttons and see where the holes are.
Exactly. All right. So we are part 5 into our 6-part series of living with and through addiction. Today, we are talking about discovering what makes life worth living. Now, I just want to go through a little recap of part 1 was why we need it until we don't. Part 2, embracing the parts of you that thought escape was the only answer. Part 3, finding the keys to control. And part 4, making room for something new. So last week, toward the end of the show, we started to lay the groundwork for this week's show of discovering what makes your life worth living. And it was funny because I said that title. So, I forget. I don't know if it was my daughter asked me the topic of this week's show, and I said that, and she was like, "Whoa, that's heavy." And it can feel heavy, but it doesn't need to be heavy, because we want you to be in this place of experimenting and exploring. Last week, we talked about doing your inventory of what works for you and what isn't working for you. So we hope you've made some space to start focusing more on what is working for you and helping you really see those points of your life that are important to you, that do keep you waking up every day and keeps you working toward a happier, more joyful, fulfilling life.
Yes. And I was muted because we could hear Judy's dog barking in the background, which made my dog bark, who's really loud. She's an Australian cattle dog, so everybody's ears would have been blasted. So I was afraid to unmute until it was quiet.
Sorry about my dog.
It's good that we have dogs. My husband's actually trying to lure my dog out of the room. So just put the leash around her neck and there you go. And then off she goes. All right, thank you. Yeah, so she's kind of a mama's girl, so it's not as easy as it might sound. So yeah, it's starting to put the pieces together on what do I need to fill my life up with so that I don't need to escape the feeling of being me. How do I create an environment around me where the internal conditions, my thoughts and my feelings and my actions, my internal responses can be something that I enjoy being in and not something that I feel like I need to escape. That's, I think, when we're asking, discovering what makes your life worth living, that's from a very like, oh, we're depressed. I mean, really, because I will tell you that there was a time when I didn't want to live anymore, because if I was going to continue to just be an addict suffering from anxiety attacks, and I forecast 20 years, like I knew how hard I was working mentally, emotionally, and physically to get through the days to continue to function in whatever, level I was. To deal with the fact that, I coffeed up in the morning and I wind down in the evening, and I navigated the landmines of panic attacks during the course of the day. It was a horrible way to live.
Mhm.
I mean, just absolute horrible. And when I forecast out 20 more years of this, I literally was like, no, thank you. I'm not interested. I would rather be gone than to be here dealing with another 20 years of this. But here's the thing, when I asked, is this all there is? Like, is it just continuing to endure this horrible, crappy internal experience, or not being here? Are those my only options? That's where I found out, actually, no. There's a lovely option that will lead you to joy, that will lead you to a life that is not only worth living, but that lights you up
Mhm.
in ways that, if you're in that place similar to what I'm talking about, right? Or if you know someone in that place, the idea of having a life that lights you up sounds like, oh, sure, we're going to go land on the moon tomorrow and have cheese. I mean, it just sounds that outlandish. But when you start practicing the things that we're putting forward, the thoughts, asking the questions, making yourself a priority, turning inside, focusing on your own inner experience and the value of that, that will eventually lead you to a place where you're no longer being thrashed by your life, which is kind of this neutral place where you can then start putting together a life that will, in fact, lead you to your joy.
Yeah, and we talked about neutral last week.
Hmm.
Neutral is important
Mm.
because neutral, if you remember, people watching along, if you remember, that's where you are able to sit on that observation deck and really look at what patterns are playing out in your life without judgment,
Mm.
without shame, without guilt, without any of those emotions that will throw you right back into zone one.
Yeah.
Because you're gathering data, you're gathering information, and really getting real with yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. And I love that you said information. I was thinking about information yesterday. Um, just in terms of, like, let's say right now I decided that I felt like, I needed a drink, right? Like, oh, I feel like I need a drink. I could be like, oh, me, I decided I wasn't going to do that. And I could start beating myself up. Or I could just be like, huh, that's interesting information. Right
Mhm.
now, I feel like having a drink. Okay, let's explore. What thoughts am I having? What does that feel like? When I say I feel like I need a drink, what does that mean? What's going on in my body? What am I feeling? Scan. Like, just turn inside and scan from head to toe. What am I feeling? Where is there tension? Where is there flutteriness? Right? Just really get in there and see, what is this experience when I say this is what I need? What's happening? What's telling me that? Right? So if we become really interested in the information as a source of leading us to our own freedom, right? When we tune in to what it is that it's telling us, what is this information signaling me about? And we really zoom into that and we explore and we start opening all that, that chest of stuff that we've stored away somewhere, and we start rummaging around in there. Actually, we'll find that the next time that we say that it pops into our head, I need a drink, there will be a different experience, less intense.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
If we it's not the it's the trying to make it stop that makes it uncontrollable.
Yeah, and when you said stop, trying to make it stop, and we've talked about this, creates conflict.
Mhm.
And as long as there's a conflict, there can't be peace. When you're asking questions, being inquisitive, looking for answers, that's a level of peace.
Yeah.
People don't understand that.
Mm.
It's that I can't feel this way, or I need to should myself and beat myself up. That's conflict.
Mhm.
Asking the questions, inquiring, digging deeper. That, again, they're saying that is a level of peace, people.
Yeah.
It really is, because it's giving you permission to explore.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And your inner critic, right? So we've talked about the inner critic or the inner judge who might sit there saying, "What are you doing asking questions right now when you should be, whatever." I, I like the approach of just like, I hear you. I
Mhm.
value your opinion. I'm just going to ask you to sit on the shelf for a little bit, right? Because we've been doing your thing your way, things your way for a long time. I'm not sure that it's working completely for all of us.
Mhm.
Right? That whole internal, our inner child, our hopes and dreams, the part of us that's the mother or the father energy, the part of us that's the wants to go out and conquer the world, the adventurer part of us, right? All of these different aspects and motivations live within us all the time. And we have one critic saying, I don't want to hear from any of you. I'm just going to sit here and bully everybody. Um, that leads to these horrible experiences that we need to escape.
Yeah, when your inner critic is telling you to sit down and shut up, which has basically, I know in my experience, my inner critic ran my show for a very, very long time. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it was running my show when I was using, um, addiction, when I was using alcohol and different addictions, workaholism, different things to escape my experience. It was definitely the inner critic because, dare I say, at the end of the day, it turned out the thing that I was really trying to escape was my inner critic.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right?
And it
What is
really does makes that shift when you're
Mhm.
like, okay, I hear you, because you're not fighting against it. You're not trying to lock it down and shut it down and shut up. Go sit in the back of the goddamn room and shut your fucking mouth. No. That doesn't work. I've tried it. That creates conflict.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had to give that critic its voice,
Mm.
but I had to be in a place where I wasn't going to fall back in like it would control me before. I had to be in that space of, okay, I'm going to hear you.
Mhm.
And once I hear you, I'm going to say, okay, well, how about we try something different? And it may sound lofty and out there and crazy, but even this past weekend, the everybody's life is being shaken up. And I don't know if it's the eclipse. Everybody's like, it's the eclipse season and it's this and it's that. But there's a lot of things going on. And I found myself, I told Kris this earlier this week in class. I found myself walking past, bottle of wild turkey and being like, oh, I should just have a drink. And instead of me being like, okay, have a drink, I was like, why? Why do I want that? Why did that come to me? Do I really want it? Or is that just a pattern
Mm.
showing itself?
Mm.
And, it depended on the day and where I was. Sometimes it was the pattern.
Mm.
Sometimes it was, no, this is hard. And I don't want to feel this right now.
Mhm.
But okay. So do you want to take the drink and numb yourself out? Or do you want to feel it? Because I have found in my experience, when I allow myself to feel it, I move through it faster. The
Mhm.
drink is just pushing it further and further, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So when I finally do deal with it and feel it, it's amplified.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we've all heard, what we resist persists,
Hmm.
right? So, like Judy said, if you sit and have the feeling, even if you decide, you know what, 2 hours from now, if I still want the drink, I'll have it, right?
Hmm.
Or an hour from now, or whatever it is that works for you. Like if I still want it, then I'll have it. But right now, I'm going to sit in this feeling and I'm going to act it out,
Hmm.
right? And what does that mean? I'm getting something about pretty much everybody knows that feeling of if I ever started crying, I would never stop.
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of us have said it. A lot of us have this deep fear that, oh my God, if I ever let it start, it's never going to stop. I can tell you, it does stop. Even the best, most, most convincing, this is going to last forever cries do actually stop. And when they do, we feel better.
Much better.
Yeah, because
Much.
we've released a lot of what we were denying, a lot of the emotion, a lot of the pain, the disappointment. Um, and I'm getting something about like making, sometimes it's hard to get really tangible to use examples, but let's talk about that inner experience being hard. Like let's say it's, oh, I don't look right. Like, oh, my hair looks terrible today. Oh, these I must have put on, X pounds because these pants are a little tight, right? Oh, my kids went to school and I had to give them, money for lunch because I didn't make the nutritious, delicious homemade bread, whatever the thing is that goes on in your mind, right? I didn't do that for my kids. So I'm not a good enough parent. I'm not good enough at taking care of my body. I don't look good enough. Oh, I'm going to be late for work. I'm not a good enough employee. Oh, I don't have enough money for, fill in the blank. Like, this is the experience that we're talking about. We're trying to escape, right? It's not an experience. It's not like some sort of foreign experience that we're talking about. It's like the everyday experience of most people.
Mm-hmm.
Just having these thoughts that just are like one fear after another, and then feeling that. Notice how that feels in your body. Right? It feels overwhelming. You feel like you're under attack because you're like, okay, I'll fix this. I'll fix that. I got to do better at this. I got to. This is not a good place to be. It's not a good experience to be. And so a lot of us are going from that kind of pepped up, caffeinated, over caffeinated, morning of one problem after another. And we're just like, if I can just get to 4:35. This afternoon, then I can stop all of this crazy by checking out with the alcohol or with the gaming or with the social media or with whatever it is that we use.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is when we're having those thoughts day in and day out and constantly comparing ourselves to what society and the world tells us we should be, we are, like you said, inundated and overwhelmed with people, programs, commercials, social media posts, it reinforcing the fact that we're not enough.
Right.
So this is the question. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? So what causes that? Is it the programming out there that causes it, or is it the thinking in here that draws it to you?
Well, it's interesting because we can answer that now, right?
Yes, we
I mean, we
can.
couldn't have answered it before,
Mm-mm.
but we can answer it now because now having, I can't say 100% deprogrammed,
Right.
but at least aware of many of my former programs, right? I don't notice most of the things that used to set me off. I don't
Mhm.
notice them. Are they still there? Probably. I don't know. I mean, I can tell you don't watch the news,
Mhm.
right? So I don't watch television at all, actually. So that, because that was like, oh yeah, that's a toxic swamp. I don't want to wade through every day. For me, not
Mhm.
not everybody will have that experience. There are lovely things on television, but the things I watched on television were things that just made my anxiety level go up.
Yeah.
And at the time that I was working really hard to manage that internal anxiety level and to find my peace, I decided not to like pour gasoline on myself every day
Mhm.
by by watching the television. But that was my experience. And now, um, I don't miss it. In fact, what were we talking about just before the show? With mm,
We were talking about a lot before the show. It's interesting because I have my little sister Laura has started watching The Nanny again, and she and I were talking the other day, and she was like, it's very interesting to go back and watch these shows that we watched when we were growing up because she's like, the amount of times that they reference body image and being thin. And she was like, there was specifically one scene where a girl was going to audition for a part in a movie or a show or something. And the mother smacked food out of her hand and looked at her and said, honey, they don't hire fat kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, being someone that's had body image issues since 3rd grade, she was like, it hit me that that was the kind of stuff you had to watch. You were watching when you were struggling so much. Mm-hmm. And she was like, and none of us knew. It was just the programming then, you know. So when we talk about programming patterns, things that have formed because of the information that was given to us.
Right.
And, you know, there's a whole thing that I consistently see on social media sites and all that, but it's true. We may not be responsible for the wounds because we didn't know any better, but we are responsible for the healing.
Yeah.
So being able to, you know, for Laura to go back and watch that show and pick up on the messaging that was being sent is interesting. And then I have my brother on the other end watching an old show, ER, and he's saying the same thing. It's very interesting to sit and watch.
Yeah.
These
it
things.
Is.
Yeah.
It
So,
is.
I mean, when we talk about
programming,
it's the unlearning. It's the unlearning. And on that observation deck, it's about observing the patterns and then getting to the core of the belief system. Do you still believe these things?
Right.
You know, with addiction, we've been running from them for so long and trying to numb them down. Being able to look at them and really ask the questions is going to help you figure out. I mean, you've held on till now. You're still here. So there is a reason that your life has worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you could probably ask everybody who loves you in your life, and they will tell you why your life is worth living. And that doesn't matter. You have to believe it. Mm-hmm. You have to discover it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to know it. And what you said about the beliefs is so important because it's not the reality of our experience that makes us want to numb out. It's our perception, interpretation of our reality in combination with our belief system that makes it so toxic in our bodies that we want to get out. Mm-hmm. Right? But the reality of what's going on in our experience in this moment, I mean, if you really just turn off, you know, your devices and you just sit with yourself in a room where, you know, the temperature isn't going to freeze you or fry you, you know, you're somewhere in the kind of happy zone, and you just sit with yourself and make friends with yourself, you know, have a conversation with yourself that is kind and respectful, you'll find out actually what's going on right here, right now. It's okay. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you're able to give yourself 5 minutes where you just say, hey, self, what's going on? Let's get to know one another, right? Let's build that kindness and respect in our experience. You'll be so far ahead. Most people, you won't even believe it, mm-hmm. right? Because it's the concepts of how we think things should be are just concepts. What we live is not our concepts. It's not our status. It's not our achievements. It's not our comparisons that we live. What we live is the actual experience of what we're thinking and feeling and doing in the locations with the people we choose. Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, boom, yes. Yeah. You know, our belief systems play out through our patterns. Mm-hmm. You know, and when we grasp and hold on to the fact that 95% of our day is in autopilot.
Yep.
You know, it's learned patterns and behaviors. When we hold on to that and are able to give ourselves, like Kris said, even 5 minutes of grace, mm-hmm. to explore, being kind and respectful to ourselves, to explore why we do the things we do, why we make the choices that we make. Because just as, you know, we made choices that were detrimental to us, which then created experiences for us to reinforce continuing that behavior
Yeah.
when we make a different decision, when we choose something different. The universe is always conspiring to support us, always working for our highest and greatest good.
Right.
So when we choose to be kind and respectful to ourselves, we're going to attract people that do the same. We're going to attract experiences that reinforce that. So when we're talking about discovering what makes your life worth living, here's that word joy again. What lights you up? What brings you joy? I went to a virtual workshop this weekend with Lee and the Z's, Lee Harris, and talked about, reflecting back to your childhood. Was there anything in your childhood that you felt joy doing, being a part of? And, they use the example of a 72-year-old man that had forgotten what joy felt like. And when he sat and thought about it, he thought about playing soccer. He loved playing soccer. He loved he loved the competition. And they're like, 72 years old. We're going to tell you, get your ass back on the pitch. Give it a try. See what happens. So he did. And of course, he couldn't perform the way he used to in his youth. And he might not have played as well as he wanted, but he felt that joy again, that spark of joy. And it reignited in him. We just need to remind ourselves what it feels like, because we are born in joy. We are born with love. We are wired. Love, joy, and peace is wired in us when we come here. And when we go through all this, it's like stripping it down and going back to our original setting.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting too, because the fear is the anxiety and the fear and the shame and the guilt and the grief and all of those things, they're wired in too. And what's interesting is that they are that information, right? They give us information about what are we focusing on? What are we telling ourselves? How are we feeling about ourselves? And what choices are we making? Like, what are we choosing to act on, right? Where are we choosing to create our lives, to make those decisions? And they're not telling us that we're bad. And this is the, it's not telling us that it's bad. It's just saying, if the way you're feeling right now, if you continue to create your life and make choices about your life from this place that you're feeling right now, you're going to continue to have a life that you don't like very much. Right? So that's kind of a gift.
Having that awareness is absolutely a gift.
Right? That information. So that information about like, oh, I want to have a drink right now. Great. Tell me more.
Yeah.
What's behind that? What's going on? Because what I know is when my body or, whatever, subconscious, whatever you want to say, the little addict, however you think about it, is saying, I want to drink. I want to drink. Right? When that's happening, what we know is you're not in joy. So it doesn't really have to tell you more than that. It's enough. Like, we don't have to form an opinion about it. We can really just say, it's telling me I'm not in joy right now. Do I want joy, or do I want to spend more time hanging out with, I want to drink?
Right.
And it's that simple. And once we give ourselves permission to like, actually, I would like to try joy out a little bit, right? Then find out what's going on inside of your experience right now. And how can you heal that? Are you willing to let it go? Right? Are you willing to feel the feeling, to think, to see the thoughts go by? A lot of people in meditation will talk about the thoughts go by like a train, right? Am I willing to watch the thoughts pass by and not grab onto them and turn them into a drama? Can I let the thoughts, can I think terrible things about myself and other people and just go, huh,
yeah,
that's interesting, right? I didn't know that was in there. Because if you actually let them go by without attachment and without judgment, they will keep on going down the road and you will never have to deal with them again.
Yes. Yes. Being the conscious observer. Conscious observer. I'm going to unpack all this stuff that I've been stuffing down, and I'm going to let it go. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to see it. Some of it I'm going to feel, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in my private practice, I have worked with some addicts, and one of the biggest things that they struggle with is, you know, and one specifically had been through multiple ODs.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that was the biggest struggle was they don't remember any of it. They
Right.
don't remember the drama. They don't remember the fear. They don't remember what they put their loved ones through, but they know it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they hurt the people that they love. How can they forgive themselves for being that monster that hurt people that love and support them so much? And that is such a big thing to sit with, and not, if you can give yourself the grace to observe it and not fall into the pit of shame and guilt, you have a chance.
Yeah. And
You-
and so important not to decide. This is the judgment thing, right? So the intellect wants to be like, that's good and that's bad. This person is good and that person is bad. I'm a dragon. That person's a unicorn, right? Let's be clear. We all get all the parts. We all
Mhm.
get all the, we've all got all of the thoughts. Some of our thoughts are beautiful. Some of our thoughts are ugly.
Mhm.
And we've got everything in between, and every single one of us has them. Right? So we may not expose them to the world, but that's just part of being human. As we go through experiences, we have different thoughts. When we interact with different kinds of situations, different kinds of people doing different kinds of things, we have thoughts, some of them beautiful, some not so much. Remember the happy wolf, right? The powerful wolf, and the deceptive wolf, or the angel and the devil, right? We've all got those two aspects. But here's the thing, if I sit here and I tell myself that I'm bad and I was bad to good people, what I'm doing is I'm denying the reality of the fact that I also have good in me that I was afraid to connect with, and that those people also have bad in them that they may be experiencing that I'm not seeing right now, because I've convinced myself that I'm so much worse.
Yes. Yes. That, boom. That is huge.
Nobody is one or the other. I think it's one of the things that happens in the spiritual community, and we talk about this a lot, right? Those of us who are like, wow, this life isn't working for me, this mainstream sort of, drive to work, pay the bills, wait to die thing isn't working for me super well. So we go out and try to find something more. And that kind of leads us toward that, listening to that inner voice, which gets termed a spiritual journey.
Mhm.
Again, we all have spirit. You don't have to acknowledge it to have it. The second we don't, go to the morgue. Those are bodies without spirit. They look different, right? They act different. So, all of us have all of the aspects in us. And when we get into the spiritual journey, we notice that the teachers start talking about this heightened experience. And indeed, you do start to feel heightened when you start letting go of the stuff that's been weighing you down. That's absolutely true. Right. But we don't want to we always say putting lipstick on a pig. We have these very straightforward analogies, but it's like, there's no value, or no, say it differently. It is not more spiritual to take what you're feeling and repackage it so that it makes you look better to other people and to yourself.
Well, that right there, if you're concerned about how you look to other people, that's an ego.
And to yourself,
Mm-hmm. That's
right?
ego.
Yeah, that is ego. So if right now I'm thinking this person's driving me crazy, and I'm saying, well, I'm glad to be here supporting their journey, then I'm not being authentic. I'm not being truthful. And I want to see myself as somebody who never gets upset. But by doing that, I'm not allowing myself to receive the information of, oh, I've still got some work to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the human experience is about feeling all the feels. We've
Mhm.
talked about this before. When we talk about being in the observation deck, it doesn't mean that we don't. I, have issues still, spurts of rage. Now, I express them in a much healthier way now. I
Hmm.
don't take it out on people. I have a punching bag and I have gloves and I don't hurt myself. I don't hurt anybody else, but I allow myself to express that anger. Whereas the beginning of my spiritual journey, I thought it was, no, we can't do that. No, no, no. We don't get angry anymore. We don't say these things to ourselves anymore. To shut up. You know, that whole sit the fuck down and shut up. That was me, talking to my
Yeah.
critic.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not about not experiencing those emotions anymore. It's about I feel like, in my experience, I feel like I'm watching myself beat
Yeah.
the shit out of the bag. I'm watching myself feel these things and move through the emotions. And that's the difference. I'm moving through them.
Yeah.
You know, we are meant to experience all of it, feel all of the feels so that they can move through you. And then you focus on what lights you up, what brings you joy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the,
And the, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just saying that's what we're here for. That's what it's
It
about.
is. It is. And the life worth living, how do you create a life worth living? It's that combination of focusing on things that bring you joy or exploring what might bring me joy.
Hmm.
And then noticing, for example, I took a drawing class early on I know I need something in my life and I don't know what it is. And I was still drinking, right? And I think I mentioned this last time. When I went to take that drawing class, I had anxiety about who are these people going to be? Like, I don't know anything about drawing. Is this going to be a class is everybody else going to be better than I am? Like, what should I wear? How do I know? Like, I had all kinds of things because even though my anxiety was pretty well, not managed, but like I wasn't afraid of it anymore. So it didn't happen very often, right? It didn't happen. It didn't come in and tsunami me anymore. But still, I had some anxiety about going to this class. So here's this desire to go out. Maybe I'll meet some new people. I have a new experience. I could find something that I enjoy, all of those things. But also, along comes the trunk of trauma that says, oh, the people might be mean. The teacher might be awful. You might be really embarrassed because you're the worst one in the class. You're the only one that can't draw. All these things had to come up. And the addict in me would have said, yeah, you're right. I'll stay home and I'll wait until 4:35, right? And then I'll crack open a beer or I'll go for lunch and have, someplace where you have to have wine because they have the best wine. I mean, that kind of thing. But no, it was actually choosing. It's like, you know what? This thing might bring me enough joy that I'm going to move through the uncomfortable feelings that I'm having. I'm going to acknowledge them. I won't deny them. Yes,
Hmm.
I feel all of these things. And it's kind of like, your intellect can even take a look and say, is there a real risk here?
Hmm.
Right now, I didn't go to a war zone and, hold up a red flag or something. I'm talking about going to an art class.
Hmm.
Right. So it was like, well, I could sit in the back row. Right. If I made deals with myself, if I don't like it, I can leave.
Hmm.
All kinds of permissioning, but was it really dangerous? Or had my mind just built it into something that seemed dangerous to keep me from getting outside of my comfort zone? And that happens a lot.
Yeah, a lot. I have a client who used to play in a band. He's a drummer and is a really good drummer. Apparently, him and the band were on the verge of doing something big, and the decision was made for him to be the responsible father and get a job and do the thing. Well, he did the thing for 15 years and pretty much kind of maneuvered through life in the numb zone, and then had a wake up call. And part of him exploring what brought him joy was his wife went and bought his drum set back and
Mm,
he started playing. Interestingly enough, you would think, okay, boom, we're right back in. No, that critic surged forward and said, what's up with you, man? You can't play like you used to. And then he had to work with the critic
mhm.
and realize and just allow himself to sit down and play for the joy of it.
Yeah.
And as soon as he did that, unbelievable, mind blowing skills, all surging back and more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. I had never thought about this before in quite this way, but while we're going through the motions, while we're unconsciously going through the motions, using our addictions and just trying to cope with life that's not lighting us up,
Mhm.
right? We're growing our anxieties. We're
Getting I
growing the self-criticisms.
Yes, more and more, gathering more and more data to support all that criticism.
Yeah, yeah. That's right. And this is where the prison comes from. I like to say that we want to protect ourselves by putting up a wall, right?
Mhm.
Nobody's coming in. I'm going to stay in here by myself. I'm going to keep everybody at arm's length. I'm going to be careful about who I interact with and where I go so that I don't come into any scary circumstances. But we don't realize that we literally wall ourselves in with the bad feelings, with the scary experiences, because most of them are in our head.
Mhm.
They're not things that have happened. That art class, there was nothing scary about that art class. That art class turned out to be a wonderful experience. I met lovely people and I learned that I could draw. And I
Mhm.
actually started seeing the world a little bit differently because of the way you had to look at things in order to be able to draw. So it was this whole perspective shift. It was a lot of layers and it was very interesting. Right? And here my mind before going to that class, I wasn't thinking about any of those possibilities. Right? It was my intuition that was like, oh, maybe an art class, right? It was just this little spark. And then I've got this whole like army standing up and going, but it's dangerous because what about this and what about that? It was all make believe,
Mhm.
right? It
Yeah,
was all illusion. Yeah.
you're talking about building those walls, and yeah, you lock yourself in there with the boogeyman.
Yeah. Yeah, then you spend your time trying to get away from this boogeyman, right? It's like everywhere I go, there he is because it's you,
Mhm. Yeah,
you
the
know?
walls. You said that, and all of a sudden, it was like being in a room filled with mirrors. Everything you're running
Mhm.
from is yourself.
Yep.
Is yourself, and as you know, where you focus your energy, the universe supports that. So if
Yeah.
you're focusing your energy on your fears and your anxieties and being being a piece of shit for one reason or another, the universe gives us what we're asking for, and that's what we're asking for.
It
So when we
does.
shift our energy to what lights us up, what brings us joy, the universe supports that too.
Yeah. And I love the mirror because, it's if we look at the world and who we're interacting with and where we're going and how our house is set up. Like I can tell when I'm working things out, when I'm processing a little bit of internal chaos, I can tell because my house starts looking a little more disarrayed. Like I'm pretty neat nicky about my house, not about everything, but about my house. I'm pretty neat nicky. When it starts to look like, a little disheveled, just things left, like something thrown there instead of folded in place. You know what I mean? When that
Mhm.
starts happening, I think of that as a mirror. It's like, okay, what's
Okay.
what's going because I know inside things are a little messy too. And oh, by the way, messy is an important part of the process
Yes. Oh,
because
yes.
as a former control freak, because that's a zone 2, thing, I got to be right, everything's got to be just so. Um if you keep everything as it is, then there's no room for growth, there's no room for flexibility, and there's no room for finding out what it is that's causing your pain,
Yeah.
right? In order to grow, in order to actually have the joy that we're looking for, we've got to be willing to open the door in our belief system and let some light in. Look at things a little bit differently. How could I reorganize this? What if I did throw some things around? Maybe I'm not so sure that way that I've heard since childhood everybody should be doing things. What if I said, I'm not so sure about that and I just tossed it on the belief pile instead of holding it there as a foundational anchor?
Yeah. Yeah.
What could
I'm
happen?
sure that works for me, because it's not about what works for everybody else. This is about you exploring and experimenting what works for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and being the king of your own castle, right? Making your own rules. We have to abide by the laws. I mean, don't be an idiot because it's not a super fun behind bars either, I would imagine. But, we also, I mean, as free people, if we find that there are laws that are keeping us from being able to be aligned mind and heart, then we would come together and we would change those laws.
Yes.
Those are our fundamental rights. So, but in your own life, if you can operate within the bounds of those, laws, you get to choose your own values and your own priorities and decide what's going to motivate you and how much it's going to motivate you and how you're going to approach that. Right? And you get all of that freedom. And really, that works much better if you do not have all of the information that's been plugged into you about how everybody does it or the right way to do it. Because for 99% of us, the way that we've been told, or not even told, the way we've drawn conclusions based on what was presented to us, a lot of times what we're seeing isn't what's really happening. It's an outcome of what's happening. For example, we'll talk about somebody, does a diet work, right? We were talking about this, I think, last week too, or maybe it was in class. But, the diet will work. Any diet will work once somebody decides internally that it's a priority for them and they believe that they can do it. It doesn't matter. So everybody looks at the particular technique they used or the particular program they followed. And they're like, oh my God, that program did it. No program can help somebody if they refuse to allow the possibility into their belief system that things can be different for them. And once they allow themselves to believe in that possibility and they focus on it and commit to it, nothing can stop them.
Yes. Okay, we've gone way over.
Have we?
We have. We're at 47 minutes, so we need to
Wow.
wrap this
Okay.
up, and we usually get a little warning. We
do.
want to say again, our website is live, so if you want to support the show and keep us going, please go to peacefulempowermentworks.org and donate.
Yes. And comments are also worth a lot. Very
Yeah.
appreciated.
We always love comments. And
We
if there's
do.
you'd like to share, remember you can reach out to Kris. Goes to both of us. Kris at peacefulempowermentworks.org. If there's anything you want us to
Kris
hit
is
on, talk about.
KRIS. Sorry,
Yes.
Kris is KRIS. From a lifetime of having that name, I know that's an important thing to say.
All right. Thank you for joining us this week, and we will be back next week for part 6, final part of our Living With and Through Addiction series.
The grand finale.
Yes, the grand finale.
Yes, maybe we'll have some champagne to toast at the end. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, on that note, we're going to say bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.